Welcome back to the program. You know, it's always sad that something has to happen before anyone takes action. And yet again, I've been saying for the longest time that all of this crazy rhetoric about calling Trump and calling his cabinet and calling Republicans and calling MAGA supporters and calling America Firsters, calling us Nazis and fascists and radicals and threats to society and all that stuff, I said in the very early on of this presidency that he ought to devote an entire team that does nothing but goes through social media and interviews and things like that on, of course, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, all of that, and go through all of that rhetoric. And whoever has said or called President Trump or MAGA or anyone a Nazi, a fascist, a threat to society, all of these horrific and horrible things, they ought to be held accountable. They ought to be charged with what's called incitement to violence. Their words are not just freedom of speech. Their words can be incitement to violence, and that's what people need to understand. You can call someone any name in the book. You can call me any name in the book. You can say whatever. You can call President Trump the biggest piece of garbage that ever walked the face of the earth. But if you call him a Nazi, if you call him a fascist, and say that he's a threat to the country, and that, quote, something needs to be done about it, now you're inciting violence. You have now gone past freedom of speech, and you're now in a completely different area. You can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater, right? Well, guess what? You can't say that somebody is a threat to society and they should be dealt with. That's incitement to violence. Well, here we are, 8-9 months later. We've seen all the attacks, 800 to 1,000% increases on attacks, of course, on ICE agents, ICE personnel. But not just that. We just had Charlie Kirk get assassinated. We have had other people get beat up, and we've had other people, be threatened, have their lives threatened. It's out of control. It's out of control. However, the administration seems to finally be understanding the dangers that are coming from the left, and they're doing something about it. The White House on Friday published an article naming more than 24 prominent Democrat officials as, quote, political agitators, accusing them of fanning the flames of domestic violence through their Gestapo-style rhetoric. The Trump administration claims that the recent sniper attack on the Dallas ICE facility, in which a shooter dropped into a rooftop position, inscribed anti-ICE epitaphs on the ammunition, and opened fire at detainees and ICE personnel in the horrific epilogue of years of left-wing radical extremism. The administration's statement links the Dallas shooting directly 1,000% surge in assaults and attacks on federal agents, asserting that the rhetoric from top Democrat leaders has, quote, provided moral cover and justification for violence to these radical thugs who see violence as the logical next step. President Trump, in a post on Truth Social, placed blame squarely on Democrats, writing, I have been briefed on the deadly shooting at the ICE field office in Dallas, Texas. It has now been revealed the deranged shooter wrote anti-ICE epitaphs on his shell casing. This is despicable. The brave men and women of ICE are just trying to do their jobs and remove the worst of the worst criminals out of our country, but they are facing an unprecedented increase in threats and violence and attacks by these deranged radical leftists. This violence is a result of the radical left Democrats constantly demonizing law enforcement, calling for ICE to be demolished, and comparing ICE officers to Nazis. The continuing violence from radical left terrorists in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination must stop immediately. ICE officers and other brave members of law enforcement are under grave threat. We have already declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and I will be signing an executive order this week to dismantle these domestic terrorist networks. I am calling on all Democrats to stop this dangerous rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement, and do it now. The Trump administration is fully committed to backing law enforcement, strong borders, securing our homeland, deporting violent illegal criminals, and fully rooting out the left-wing domestic terrorism networks that are terrorizing our country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, what the White House has done next is they have named names. And I think this is long overdue. Long overdue. We should have been doing this from day one. We should have a task force, like I said, that did nothing but spend hours upon hours upon hours going through all social media and all media clips and going, okay, and this person, and this person, and this person, and this person, and charging them in just all out, charging all of them with incitement to violence. But anyway, so here's where we're at. So number one on his list should be Gavin. It's actually not. It's actually Tampon Tim Walz. Governor Tim Walz smeared ICE as the, quote, modern-day Gestapo. Governor Gavin Newsom likened ICE to, quote, secret police, calling them authoritarian and proclaiming a right to push back. Again, a right to push back, that is incitement to violence. Governor J.B. Pritzker claimed the country is becoming a Nazi Germany-like country because ICE is, quote, grabbing people off the street and disappearing them. First off, no, they're not. They're grabbing criminal aliens, okay? They're grabbing people off the street that have overstayed visas, that have criminal records, and that continue to avoid reporting, number one, and number two, leaving on their own. And they've been given multiple opportunities to leave on their own, even a little bit of cashish too, to get the hell out of the country. But yet, they haven't done it. Some have, but not many have. So you know what? Now you're going to be forcefully removed from the country. And we don't care about your feelings. We're going to grab you by the throat if we have to and drag you on the cement out. And we're going to put you and lock you up and detain you and then ship your asses out of the country. It's just that simple. Okay? Who was next? So you have J.D. Beck Ribs. We already got that one. Representative Robin Kelly smeared ICE as the Gestapo and a betrayal. Jasmine Crock-of-Shit compared ICE to, quote, slave patrols. Wow. Slave? Well, first of all, they came here on their own volition. We didn't grab them, put them on a boat, and drag their asses in here. So I don't understand the whole slave reference. That's pretty stupid for someone that went to Ivy League schools and prep schools and actually lived and grew up in a white St. Louis neighborhood with Republican neighbors, but yet thinks that she's some type of ghetto trash whore now. Unbelievable. Who else was on here? Sylvia Garcia referred to ICE agents as thugs. Representative Delia Ramirez attacked ICE as a terrorist force. Pramila Jayapal called ICE agents deranged, accused them of, quote, kidnapping, and said resistance to ICE is, quote, inspiring. Wow, really? Rep. Rashida Mustache Tlaib said ICE is, quote, terrorizing our communities and turning our country into a fascist police state, and called it a rogue agency. Wow. Well, ICE is actually the good guys. ICE are actually trying to keep the criminals that are here, that are terrorizing our neighborhoods, trying to keep them from being able to do that by gathering them, rounding them up, and deporting them or jailing them. Unbelievable. Who else? And then we've got Representative Ayanna Pressley, Shinehead, said that ICE is, quote, terrorizing our communities. No. Illegal criminal aliens from Venezuela and Guatemala and El Salvador and Mexico and every other place are the ones that are doing that. Representative Max Frost, boy, this guy needs to keep his mouth shut, the Antifa member that he is, right? Compared ICE operations to, quote, some of the worst horrors and crimes against humanity in history. Really? Have you ever cracked open a book, Frost? Huh? Or is your brain just frostbitten? Have you heard of Mao Zedong? 76 million people murdered. Have you seen some of the history on Pol Pot, Idi Amin, the real Hitler, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Lenin? The list is endless of how many left-wing radical extremists that have gained power through illegal means and then went out and murdered and systematically killed all the people that, quote, either didn't support them or they saw as a threat to their power. And this idiot, this moron, sits there and he's a member of Congress, for goodness sakes. I know more than this guy about everything, not just congressional stuff. I know more about everything than Maxwell Frost, okay? The fraud who has a frostbitten brain. He said that ICE was the worst thing in human history. What the hell are you even talking about? Representative John Larson said ICE is the SS and the Gestapo. So again, comparing it to the Nazis once again. Representative LaMonica McIver, who hopefully is going to go to jail for body slamming an ICE agent, incited people to, quote, shut down the city because, quote, we are at war. Really? We're at war? We're at war. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. ICE is doing their job, removing bad people that are waging war against our country by invading us, hello, but yet somehow ICE are the bad guys. I don't get it. Next is, what was the next idiot on the list? Representative Stephen Lynch smeared ICE agents as, again, the Gestapo and nondescript thugs. Representative Dan Goldman, oh, this guy's just a piece of garbage. Oh, just a disgusting excuse for a human being. Compared federal agents to, quote, secret police who must be unmasked. I already told you they're not going to be unmasked. Gavin Newsom doesn't have the constitutional authority to tell anyone, especially the federal government and DHS and ICE agents, to take their masks off. Not going to happen, okay? Representative Becca Ballant called ICE agents, quote, vigilantes who can't be trusted. Representative Ilhan Noor Saeed Elmi, the terrorist in Congress, said ICE agents are, quote, vile and beyond cruel, and that the agency should be abolished. Oh, so not only abolishing ICE and abolishing the police, and what else you want to abolish? The Republican Party, huh? You sicko. She is just so evil. Who else? Representative Nikki Budzinski, ought to Budzinski out, as far as I'm concerned, called ICE agents dangerous and reckless. Senator Barney Sanders asked people to, quote, figure out a way to stop ICE from what they are doing as soon as possible, but didn't elaborate any further than that. Senator Elizabeth Warren from the Liar-Watha tribe, who I guess their chief was sitting bullshit, claimed ICE is, quote, intentionally stoking fear and tearing communities apart. Wow. Representative Hakeem Jeffries implored people to, quote, fight the Trump administration in the streets. Again, this is incitement to violence. And declared ICE agents will, quote, will be unsuccessful in protecting their identities no matter what it takes. Well, what are you going to do? Physically rip off the mask from them? Is that what you're planning on doing so that you can find out who they are and terrorize their wife and children in the middle of the night, you scumbag? Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, who likely has ties to the CCP, by the way, compared ICE agents to the, quote, neo-Nazi group NSC 131. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson accused ICE of being, quote, the secret police who are terrorizing our communities. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Basshole spread a disgusting fabricated hoax that ICE, quote, kidnapped a woman on her way to work. Representative Gil Cisnero claimed ICE has, quote, terrorized people through, quote, racial profiling. Representative Eric Swallowswell, or Fartswell, said that it was his, quote, priority to ensure that ICE agents are no longer faceless, comparing them to some 1800s bank robbers or some KGB officers in Russia. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Dumbelina, said ICE agents should, quote, not exist. Wow. Well, how would you not allow them to exist. You didn't really elaborate on that. And you want to run for president, you sicko? Representative Quasi Mufumi, whoever the hell that is, challenged the Trump administration to, quote, a street fight. And then Representative Jerry Noxious No-Nads Nadler accused ICE agents of, quote, hiding misbehavior because otherwise, why would they be wearing a mask? Well, they have to wear a mask, number one. And number two, they're wearing a mask so that you sick bastards don't dox them and chase down their families and scare their children and everything else that these people have been doing. Now, that's just some. There's a whole bunch more that have obviously not hit the list. But, as I said, this is the problem. It is the rhetoric. Now, let me let you all in on a little secret. Every single one of these psycho idiot Democrats supports ICE. That's right, you heard me. Every single one supports ICE. They won't say it publicly because it doesn't work for them politically. They know that ICE are not the bad guys. This is all political. This is to scare the American people into then voting for Democrats. Okay? These folks all met in conference rooms. What are we going to do to fight against the Trump administration? Oh, hey, I got an idea. Let's call them Nazis. Let's call them that. Oh, that didn't work winning the election, huh? Well, let's change it. Oh, I know. He wants to do the largest mass deportation in American history. Let's start calling ICE agents the Nazis. Yes, that'll work. Then we'll get the crazies to go out there and attack them. Yeah, there's our strategy. Pass the martini, okay? They support ICE. Every single one of these far left scumbags supports ICE and supports what they're doing. They just are using ICE as a political weapon to try to scare the American people to bring them away from the Republican Party and back to the Democrats. Why? Because they got nothing. That's why. They have absolutely nothing to offer the American people. They know it. They're stuck in this gangster mentality. They don't want to fight fair. They don't want to fight with words. They don't want to fight with policies that would help the American people. And so they've given up. They have given up. They have basically said, we don't have another strategy other than fear-mongering and scaring the American people into submission. That's what they want. They want you to submit to left-wing ideology. And you know what? Not a fucking chance. Okay? Not a chance. It is never going to happen. Never. So get that out of your minds, leftists. Bottom line is, all these people, they ought to be arrested and investigated and charged with incitement to violence. You can't just go around and call people a threat, and then when somebody does something and kills them or hurts them, you can't say, well, it was just my words. No, 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 no. That is incitement to violence. You can call us any name in the book. You can tell us that we are terrible, garbage, the worst people on earth. That's fine. Demonize the hell out of us. But don't you dare call us a threat and tell people that we have to be dealt with in the streets and everything else. That is incitement to violence. How do you think I survived all the auto pen years when we were in the minority and when they stole the election and my rhetoric was pretty heated? But I never crossed the line. I never did anything that would be considered incitement to violence because I have a brain, because I'm smart. That's why I've never had a knock and a visit from the FBI, even with the Ilhan Nuar Saeed and Elmi dust up and all that, because I never threatened her. But the bottom line is, these people are threatening us every single day. Every single day. And it must stop. And I believe it will shortly. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to the program. So everyone knows the name George Soros. I'm not telling you anything new. George Soros and his Open Society Institute own about 140 left-wing organizations, many of which have supported terrorism, and it's documented, okay? It is documented. And if these organizations have Democrats that they funded or Democrats that gave money to them, they are now in legal and criminal jeopardy. Let me be as clear as I can. We are coming after these financiers of terror. We are. And we have the tools to do it now because Antifa is now a terrorist organization. Okay? Listen to this. $80 million went in from the Open Society Institute and George Soros into organizations that funded terrorism. Since 2016, Soros' Open Society Foundation, now run by his spawn of Satan's son, Alexander, has funneled more than $80 million into organizations with direct ties to extremists, violent individuals, and terrorist organizations, according to the Capital Research Center. For years, the Open Society has been portrayed as a philanthropic giant funding of progressive causes. But the financial trail reveals something much more sinister and darker. Tens of millions sent to groups that either train activists in sabotage or partner with foreign terrorist networks. You heard that correctly. The evidence is overwhelming. It is extensive. OSF has awarded millions. OSF is, the Open Society Foundation, so I want to make sure you understood what I was saying there, has awarded millions to U.S.-based groups that openly engage in what the FBI defines as domestic terrorism. Among them are the Center for Third World Organizing. Imagine that, the Center for Third World Organizing. So is that organizing America into a third world shithole? Or is that organizing in third world countries? Well, I don't know, but it kind of can go either way, I guess. And its militant partner, the Ruckus Society. You ever hear the word? It's kind of an older term. Immediately comes to mind, what was the movie? With the Breakfast Club. Remember that movie in the 80s? When he makes a noise, he falls through the roof, and the guy comes in, he goes, "What was that ruckus?" "What ruckus, sir?" "I didn't hear a ruckus." "I heard a ruckus." Okay, well, there you go. The Ruckus Society. So they're basically saying disruption. Okay, ruckus, disruption. These organizations gained notoriety during the 2020 riots when they trained activists in property destruction. Imagine that. They trained people how to destroy property. Don't hit it here, hit it over here. If you hit this part here, then the rest of the building will fall here. If you hit the glass in this location, it'll shatter all the way through. I mean, it's just so sick. Property destruction, sabotage, and direct actions that paralyzed cities across America. You know, the Summer of Love. OSF, excuse me, has also funded the Sunrise Movement. Now, the Sunrise Movement is one that I talked about in 2020, 2021. This is a bad group of radical extremists. These are the ones that they're so extreme, they went into Nancy Pelosi's office and were protesting in her office, okay? Not that I care about Nancy Pelosi, but that's how radical they are. They go after even the most radical extreme Democrats, too. The Sunrise Movement. They are communists through and through. So let's see. The Sunrise Movement, which lent its endorsement to the Antifa-linked Stop Cop City campaign. Imagine that. The name of the campaign is called Stop Cop City. Wow. That campaign alone has left more than 40 activists facing domestic terrorism charges and 60 others being indicted under Georgia's racketeering laws. At the same time, Soros' foundation poured another $18 million into that movement, and of course, for Black Lives Matter, a coalition published a radical organizing guide glorifying Hamas's October 7th massacre in Israel. The guide does not stop there. It instructs activists in deception, including how to use false identification, blockade infrastructure, and engineer economic disruption. By underwriting such efforts, the Open Society Foundation has made itself a partner, an explicit and complicit partner in terrorism. Let me repeat that. The Open Society and George Soros are terrorists. They are terrorists. I want people to know that. In escalation of political violence, and they are not merely bystanders. The problem extends far beyond America's borders. Between 2016 and 2023, the Open Society sent more than $2.3 million to Al-Haq, H-A-Q, a West Bank-based non-governmental organization repeatedly accused of ties to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, again Hamas, terrorists, a group designated as a terrorist organization by both the United States and the European Union. Imagine that. Soros and his minions sent $2.3 million to this organization that has been designated as a terrorist organization. Unreal. OSF's grants range from $400,000 in, quote, general support to $800,000 in, quote, institutional support, whatever that may mean. In September of 2025, the U.S. State Department sanctioned Al-Haq, declaring that the group had, quote, directly engaged in the International Criminal Court's illegitimate targeting of Israel. That means Soros's money helped bankroll an organization now officially blacklisted by this administration. The scale is staggering. From U.S. streets to the West Bank, Soros's dollars have consistently flowed to movements that reject democratic order and, of course, support terrorism. The Open Society Foundation brands itself as a defender of justice and human rights, but in reality, the record shows $80 million plus spent empowering extremists whose goal is chaos at home and abroad. And I'm telling you, we're gonna smash it. Okay, we're gonna smash it. Alexander Soros, you scumbag, you think that you're gonna stop the Trump administration from taking down OSF? Think again, you little pipsqueak. You're going down. Okay? You are a terrorist financer. You are going down. And this administration is going to do it. Now, Antifa, let's talk about that. Guess what? You guys are going to be obliterated probably very, very soon. Why? Well, because President Trump is not playing around anymore. He has authorized full force of troops to Portland, Oregon, and other cities for that matter, to protect ICE from Antifa and other domestic terrorists. So President Donald Trump sending them full in. I am also authorizing full force if necessary. I think Antifa better understand what full force means. Full force means that if you threaten, they're certainly not going to shoot first, but if you threaten an ICE agent, if you pull a gun on an ICE agent, if you pull a knife, if you throw something, if you do something, you may not get hit with rubber bullets. That's all I'm going to say. Okay? Full force means full force. And I think you people and your septic rings and your purple hair and your trans Tifa bullshit better straighten up. Because if you don't, you could be straightened out this way. Okay? Pushing up daisies because of your sick, erratic, evil, sadistic, and insidious behavior. So we'll see what happens. I'm glad. We've had enough. We have had enough of the demonization. We have had enough of being called all these horrific things. And the Democrats and the media, you're all responsible. All of you. You all support ICE secretly, quietly. You can't say it publicly, right? You don't want to lose your base and your support. You want safer cities. You have no problem, none whatsoever, no problem with ICE agents being masked or being on the streets, because you all know what's happening. They're removing your illegal voter base. That's why you have come up with this strategy to demonize them in order to scare the American people back into the arms of the Commucrats. Well, sorry, but it ain't gonna work. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.